Ladies and gentlemen, may I have your kind attention, please? We will now begin with the special address by Air Marshal Narmdeshwar Tiwari, SYSM, PVSM, AVSM, VM, Vice Chief of the Air Staff, on civil military fusion to harness emerging technologies to overcome challenges posed by an increasingly democratized airspace. It is a pleasure to have you here, sir. The session will be moderated by Air Chief Marshal Vivek Ram Chaudhary, PVSM, AVSM, VM, former Chief of the Air Staff. Air Chief Marshal V.R. Chaudhary, PVSM, AVSM, VM, served as the 27th Chief of the Air Staff of the Indian Air Force from 30th September 2021 to 30th September 2024. Born on 4th September 1962, he was commissioned into the fighter stream of the Indian Air Force on 29 December 1982. An alumnus of the National Defense Academy, he has flown over 3,800 hours on various aircrafts, including the MiG-21, MiG-23 MF, and MiG-29, and was part of the IAF's first aerobatic team on Kirant. A Category A qualified flying instructor, an instrument rating instructor, and examiner, he is also a graduate of the Defense Services Staff College, Wellington. During his distinguished career, Air Chief Marshal Chaudhary held several key field and staff appointments. He commanded a frontline MiG-29 squadron and later served as Chief Operations Officer and Base Commander at major air bases in Western and Southwestern Air Commands. He was also an instructor at the Defense Services Staff College, Wellington, and the Defense Services Command and Staff College, Zambia. As DCAS, SASO EAS, AOC in C, WAC, and VCAS, he played a pivotal role in strengthening the IAF's operational readiness and modernization. A very warm welcome to you, sir. May I now request you both to come up on the stage, please? Thank you, sir. I now request you to take over the proceedings, please.
Thank you. Ambassador Shenoy, Sri Baba Kalyani, senior officers, ladies and gentlemen, very good evening to all of you. I've got the very unenviable task of chairing the last session when most of your smartwatches are telling you to get up and go for a walk. Nevertheless, I think the importance of this session, the topic for this session, can be judged by the fact that this is the second time in 3 years that the IDSA is doing a session on civil-military relations. And I'm told that Sri Baba Kalyani has flown in from Pune specially to attend this session. So thank you, sir. We are grateful for you to be here. It's my privilege to introduce the speaker of this session, Air Marshal Narmdeshwar Tiwari, the Vice Chief of the Air Staff. He assumed this position as the Vice Chief at a critical juncture when he was actually, the baptism by fire took place 3 days before Operation Sindoor. He was appointed as the Chief of the Air Staff, and he steered the operations from the helm at Air Headquarters. He's an alumnus of the National Defense Academy, a gold medal winner from there, a qualified flying instructor and an experimental test pilot with over 3,600 hours of flying. He's done his staff Air Command and Staff College in the USA. He has, when it comes to civil-military relations in particular, I think you could not have found a better person to speak on this topic, given his vast experience with the aviation industry and the aeronautics ecosystem in our country. He has been heading the Aeronautical Development Agency's NFTC, the National Flight Test Center, and he has carried out extensive flight testing on the light combat aircraft, the Tejas, and cleared it for its final operational clearance. He has been a part of the team that had integrated the lightning pods on the Mirage 2000s in real quick time when we were faced with a crisis in the Kargil conflict. Prior to this appointment, he served as the CNC of Southwestern Air Command and was the Deputy Chief of the Air Staff. Another appointment which gave him a wide spectrum of duties, which included a lot of civil-military cooperation issues, particularly in the field of sharing of technology. So without much ado, I will request the Vice Chief to take on the stage.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, like our former chief said, it's a very unenviable task to stand as one of the last speakers of a session post-lunch and tea. So I will try to keep you engaged and occupied. So that's why I've got a presentation here so that it is just not droning and talking, something to show on the slides. When this topic was given to me, I was a little flummoxed as to, what do I need to speak, especially 15 to 20 minutes on such a topic. So I said that while democratization of the airspace is largely dealing with, the proliferation of drones and the challenges of airspace management in this, I thought that I would, step out and take a more holistic or a larger view of, how we in the uniform look towards civil military fusion. So it is not just about airspace management, and there is a whole heap of things where we can work together. And I think the complementarities that come with that, especially the skill sets with the civil world brings out, is very, very important as we go forward in the future, which is going to be data driven. So when I look at future warfare as a uniform personnel, I think three things stand out in terms of components. You will have largely many autonomous systems because AI is going to be embedded in it. So AI, machine learning, quantum technologies, all this will come in a big way. And a snapshot of that was seen during Sindoor. Yesterday, I was at another conference where we were discussing about network security and things like that. Uh, so I did mention the fact that during Sindoor, what was different from previous operations is that we had our integrated air command and control system. We had a complete situational awareness of the entire country. And this is quite a thing to say because when the IACC's project started, the backdrop was actually the Purulia arms drop in 1995, where we had, huge chunks of our country and airspace where we didn't even know that aircraft were flying and dropping weapons. So from that time, we have come a long way and largely developed indigenously. Of course, there have been challenges along the way, but this getting together of sensors, systems, equipment, and whatever weapon systems into one common networked uh, analogous picture of what we call the common air situation picture has been largely possible because we had this vision that at some point of time we have to get networked, and that is the way to go forward. So any future operations is going to be data driven. It is going to, so for data and decision support, it is very important that you have the networks, the communication in place, the sensors in place, and the computational power and the underlying applications there to ensure that you're able to take decisions properly. So in that context, if you look at this, because we have this common air picture available, we were much more efficient in our air defense operations. We knew exactly when the adversary was getting airborne at what point of time, whether I'm sitting in Delhi, whether it is in the forward base like Srinagar, or whether you are in Bhuj. All three of us were exactly on the same picture at the same time. So that gives you a tremendous flexibility in planning your operations, conducting it efficiently. There were times when earlier we used to launch many aircraft just to protect our airspace. But today we don't need to do that because you will get that warning and you will be able to launch on demand practically. So that, conserves effort and ensures that, those aircrafts are available for any future use. So any future operation is what I'm trying to bring out is going to be data driven. And this is where I think with the dynamic, adaptive technologies that are coming in, the cyber, your EW, everything is going to get involved. What I will call and what we already know is the multi-domain operations. So if you look at this, this is one area where I think the civil world is doing much better than what we feel the defense world is doing. Earlier technologies were largely driven by defense. You had internet came in because it was initially a technology meant for defense networking, and finally it proliferated into civil systems. But today the tide has turned. I think the civil world, in terms of the data centers which are available, the GPUs available, the computational power available in civil world with companies like Google, Alphabet, and Facebook and Meta, and such companies is huge, humongous. and they are able to roll out applications based on AI. And so this is one area where I think the civil world is actually leading the defense side. And therefore, if you have this kind of a fusion available and we can take these technologies, it is going to only benefit us in the future for military operations. Of course, the challenging and complexities of this remain, and that is why if you have good computational power, people who can solve complex problems, they can easily translate from the civil world to the military side. Of course, there is a capability gap which is existing in our country today. We cannot ignore that. That is largely because our R&D has, not kept pace with the kind of requirements that are there. We have to just see around us what China is doing, what other countries are doing. They are way, way ahead of us in many of these, systems, especially those based on, AI, machine learning, even quantum, space, aviation technologies. And part of this is also because we have, I think, our skill levels, the technical education, at a fundamental level is lacking. So maybe our colleges and industry need to get together to ensure that the people who pass out are passing out with the correct skill set, because it takes a lot of time to develop those kind of skills and ensure that you have continuity for long-term projects, especially in the defense. So one of the challenges in defense R&D, especially we have been grappling with aero engines. We have been grappling with the fifth and sixth generation fighter aircraft. Now, this kind of technologies are not easily available from anywhere outside. So if you have to develop it in-house, you not only need to have a base, a foundational base of people and skills which are available, which will be able to absorb this technology. We also need, because even if you interact with the foreign partners, I think we should have that capacity that we can absorb it and build on it, because at the end of it, the cutting edge technologies we have to build ourselves. So that foundational base is required is very, very important. And if we are not able to do this, we know that as we go progress into the future, we will go divergent in terms of what is our requirement and what is the availability in our system. And if we are not able to do it, we will find ourselves wanting in a future battle. The emerging technologies I've also mentioned, and I think in many of these technologies, I think the civil sector can help us, tremendously. So if we can complement both our civil resources and military resources, have better interoperability in these systems, because there are many civil systems which can actually translate into military applications and work wonderfully with minor tweaking. So that innovation will come from an interoperability. If it is gone in, we have the resilience, and we include the civil requirements when we take in, whenever we look at military applications, we should look at foundationally building it over civil applications already available, because they will be ahead of this technological curve. So where it is today, our ecosystem, like I said, especially on the aviation side, is relatively nascent, limited scale. And even there, whatever pockets of excellence are there, they are in small penny pockets. It's not a vast ecosystem which we can, enmesh together and create anything new that we want to know. And therefore, collaborative R&D is very, very important for us. And for this, policy at the government level is important, because we tend to somehow segregate the military and the civil side. And I think the time has come, just like we should take a leaf out of the Chinese book. In fact, the Chinese have been talking for the last many years. They call it a military civil fusion, MCF. And that is their roadmap to becoming, a fully developed superpower by 2049. Why they have done so is because they realized that they require the human skill sets. And many of the people they sponsor go to US universities and sponsors and universities abroad and come back into the ecosystem. So they have developed policies which ensures that such highly skilled people who are trained abroad, who have worked abroad, are able to come back into and work into our ecosystem. And that is why they are today where they are today, because 20 years back or 20 to 30 years back when they started, they had this vision that by 2049, they should be, if not the sole superpower, at least they should be able to challenge the US in all domains. And certainly they have come a long way. So I think those enabling policies and creating ecosystem is very, very important for us. So largely, there are 4 avenues I have looked at especially from the military or the aviation perspective: the airspace, the aerospace industry, nation building, and of course, the use of dual use infrastructure, which is important to develop the aviation ecosystem in our country. In nation building, of course, the Air Force, just for everyone's information, we have involved in many projects which probably is under the radar for many of you, but it is a fact that even in places like Gaganyaan, not only are we, giving the air crew or the pilots who are going to be the astronauts or Gaganauts, but we also are involved heavily into the testing of the systems. Whether it is the space capsule, the recovery capsule, and things like that, and even the inside the suborbital capsule development of that, we are very, very closely involved. Of course, HADR missions and things like that. But we also support infrastructure development especially along the border areas, the ALGs. Many of the front villages and small towns in our countries are largely supported by the ALGs, which are provided by the Air Force. So there are many such areas where we have a direct connection with the civil world. Airspace is, this is a map which you can look at how dense is our airspace. Almost 3.5 million flights we are looking after every year. And identification, segregation of this, ensuring that our, airspace remains inviolate is our 24/7 job. We have fighter aircrafts on ORPs. We have weapon systems ready on the go. And this is a job which is practically, probably no one is aware of it, but this is what we do. And this is another area where you can see how civil and military fusion has worked very well. All the ATC radar, all the civil radars are actually integrated into our, along with our military radars to give this common air picture. And this is, I will talk about this a little later when we come to, democratization of the airspace that we are talking of. Dual use infrastructure. We provide a lot of airfields where the civil flights land, and we are making it happen, especially under the UDAN scheme. Many places we have flexible use of airspace is ensuring that it is more efficiently used, especially in border areas in the northeast, where spaces, airspaces are limited. Both military and civil aircrafts have to fly. So we have worked out procedures where both it is possible, and therefore we are able to, further the cause of civil aviation and connectivity. All new airfields that are coming up, especially on the civil side, we are now going ahead as a future, keeping the future in mind to get a defense enclave so that it can be utilized in case of operations or in case of HADR and such like facilities. So case like the new Mumbai airport, which has come up, we have got a small pocket of land there, which we are going to develop. And similarly, any such big new airports are coming up, we are asking for this as a future development plan. We are very much connected into the PM Gati Shakti so that all our airfields are available as logistics node in case it is required in the future for logistic connectivity. As far as the domestic aerospace systems goes, in fact, the UAV and the swarm UAV technologies have largely been driven, thanks to the Air Force. We started this Meher Baba competition, which really kick-started the drone industry in India. And I must say that the first Meher Baba competition has resulted in over 2,100 crores of actual deliveries and productions since then. And many of the drone companies that you saw today were actually started participation in Meher Baba competition. So we have furthered this and now done, subsequently, we have done 2 or 3 more competitions on different areas of problem statements. And we see a excellent response from the industry, especially the small and medium scale industry. We have, therefore, Directorate of Aerospace Design, which is one of our key directorates which interacts with industry, and we give problem statements. We also interact and ensure that the solutions provided are tuned to our requirements. And this is one single point of contact from us for any this thing, whether it is space application, whether it is a ground application or airborne application. Even if you don't know where to get in touch, if you can get in touch with this directorate, they will make it happen with the relevant directorate if it is required. One more point I just mentioned here is which we tend to overlook, and I think we can do much better here, especially as our civil aviation sector is growing tremendously. We have a whole batch of trained manpower available with us, especially our technicians who retire in large numbers every year. And as the civil aviation industry is picking up, MROs are being set up. This thing, one set of trained pool people which you can tap, and they can produce excellent results. And this is not only true for technicians. Whether you look at pilots for flying aircraft, we have a terrific shortage of pilots in the civil side, and all our military pilots are very well trained. So it is just a matter of a little bit of regulation and licensing, which I think as a nation we should look at how to make it happen more easily. Similarly, with engineering crew, a lot of these people are available, highly trained people, ATC officers who can man our ATCs which are running 24/7. So many of these areas where I think we can do, you can do much more, especially we are able to contribute even on the civil side to ensure that our civil sector grows up. So there are many opportunities. Of course, some challenges also there, cultural differences between the military and the civil side. There is always, we are chary about sharing of assets and manpower, especially where security is concerned. But we can work around this, and the weak aerospace technological base is something I think as together we have to work, both industry, academia, and of course the government and the military services. I think we can work together on this. We can do wonders because there are pockets of excellence, but we need to have the vision and we have to right direction and funding to ensure that we are able to take it to this logical conclusion. And coming to democratization of airspace, which also is one of the key challenges for us, is with the booming civil industry and of course this drone now that has kicked up, a very liberal drone policy. There are, the challenge is coming because we are very difficult to find that, you're operating in the same airspace. You have military aircraft, civil aircraft, and the drones. And the way it has been designed right now, because we want to ensure that, the commercial exploitation of the drone happens, and we shouldn't be too restrictive. It is also resulting in areas where you may have a little bit of conflict. You have many incidents where GPSs are interfered with. Why they are interfered? Because we want to prevent drones from entering those areas. Now it has unintended consequences, like you had the case in Azerbaijan where you had an aircraft accident being up. Recently we saw, in the news that in Delhi and in and around there have been cases of GPS spoofing, and especially in bad weather or poor visibility, it can lead to actually you can have serious accidents. This is one case. I just want to give you a video of, you see how close encounters with a fighter aircraft by a FPV drone. This was in Ukraine, practically flown over it. You see another case where a drone hit a civil aircraft and it lost a tip of its wing. And this is it's not a doctored video. It is an actual video which has happened. So we have a challenge here. And when you look at drone operations, two things come out. One is, of course, in the legacy systems, we had a lot of time. We took over and over 15 years, we developed a system. But with drones coming in, this technology cycle is shortened to 1 to 2 years. And therefore, with change in technology, if your policy and your procedures are not able to keep pace, then we'll always be out of tune, and possibly you can be in a place which you don't want to be. So what we have done right now is that we are separated in some sense. We have, if you look at the drone policy, you have the red, yellow, and green zones. So there are places you can fly, places you cannot fly. So there is segregation. And if you don't want drones to be there in the area and people are still flying, which is how it is right now today, because Our drone policy says that no permission, no flight. But you find enough drones flying all over. In fact, just today morning, we recovered in one of our bases drone on the runway, practically just at the touchdown point. A small drone has been recovered. So we have these cases every week or 10 days. And therefore, people are using jammers. Now, jammers have their own issues. Because if you are using a jamming, you are not only affecting what is there in and around airfield or the area you want to jam, but also civil networks, even mobile networks and things like that. And of course, civil air traffic. So I think we have to come to this place where we have to look at integration rather than segregation, because that is the way to go in the future if you really truly want to democratize this airspace and ensure that everyone works together seamlessly in this. So you have the civil airspace, you have the unmanned traffic management, which is largely the drone system, and you have the military operations. If these three key data streams can work together as one system, I think that is the way to go, because that will not only solve a major problem, but what I'm going to bring out is that elements of the system is already available. We just need to build on it and ensure that this laissez-faire kind of a thing is not there. The three pillars of integration, if you want to integrate this system, is one is you need to deconflict between the different types of traffic, the flexible use of airspace, because that is more efficient to use than segregating airspace, because that is inefficient. And of course, if you are able to pinpoint the location of each of this, then you will have better control over friend and foe. So if we are able to manage these three things, I think we will be able to integrate better. And elements of this, like especially between the civil and the military, already exist. Policy is existing in place. We have the technical, the database is available. What we need to do is now ensure that on the side of UAVs and drones, we are able to get in place procedures and practices what we use for civil flying. Today, if you have to get a civil flight airborne, you do a flight plan, the route is passed, ADC is obtained, he is tracked, there is a ADSB. So therefore, from the moment he gets airborne to till the time he lands, he is flying a charted path, he is known, he's tracked, and he's deconflicted. The challenge with UAVs is many of the UAVs, you are supposed to have what you call number, identification number assigned, but the smaller ones you cannot pick up. The bigger ones, which will happen as we go forward, we don't insist on certain key requirements like a ADSB kind of thing, which will ensure that its position is known all the time so that it can be deconflicted. We need to, at least for the bigger drones, look at having some certain kind of a flight plans or some routes through which only they will operate from those routes. So this kind of discipline procedures, only when it comes, you will find that you will be able to integrate it together in one common system. Now, fortunately for us, the integrated air command and control system is a key database which we have. I just mentioned in the beginning that we have already the civil traffic integrated in it. The military traffic is already there. Now, if the unmanned traffic also is integrated on this, then you have that common, air picture that you desire, and it will prevent, any catastrophe or any accidents, and it will be safety for all. So this is something we need to work on. For the unmanned system, there need to be key things which should be on board, especially as you go in a higher class of UAVs. Something like a ADSP, identification numbers, they should be ensuring that a flight plan is filed. And of course, regulations to ensure that, defaulters are taken to task, because it concerns safety of everyone. So if we want to, make the future-proof sky that is flexible, uh, ensure that it is safe for all and secure it for the nation, I think that is the way to go. And if we are able to do that, I think what we are talking of democratization of the airspace and ensuring that proliferation of UAVs to ensure that commerce and other areas where we can work together and make it happen, it will be possible. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, you'll agree with me. Very crisp, clear, concise presentation and a talk given by the Vice Chief of the Air Staff. I think he's amply highlighted the challenges of democratizing the airspace and the issues, the challenges that are faced before the armed forces and the Air Force in particular, and how this capability gaps can be bridged by a better civil military fusion at all levels. So we all understand that the trajectory of the aerospace industry and the aerospace economy in the country is actually mirrors the trajectory of the Indian Air Force's requirements also to use the same airspace. And solutions using technology are available. It is up to us to accept that we can find a solution to every problem with the available technologies, homegrown technologies, and integrate not only our facilities, not only the research and development capabilities, but also pulling in of manpower, like the Vice Chief brought out, is a very essential component of this entire fusion. He brought out some very interesting statistics on how many aircraft fly over our country every day. If you actually break it down, it works out to 7 aircraft every second are either getting airborne or are flying across the airspace of our country. And each of these has to be identified, tagged, given an air defense clearance number. It's a humongous task, aided completely by the automation process available through the IACCS that he's talked about. And one more point I'll just cover before I hand over for any questions is on the challenges with respect to utilization of trained manpower or that are being, that the Air Force sheds with regularity. So we have a peculiar situation he mentioned where we have 39 joint user airfields. The controllers in all these airfields are Air Force controllers. They are allowed to control a civil aircraft. But the same controller is not allowed to go to a civil airfield and control the same aircraft. This is the regulations. We need to find solutions for such, very, very commonplace problems. So I think I'll throw the house open for questions. I can see a lot of hands shooting up already. So, Ambassador Yogendra.
Thank you, Chair. Sir, it's a wonderful presentation. I have just two questions. One, you said that at a certain level, you would want the drones to be identified. But my sense is that even if those which are low flying, even they can be a hazard, particularly if an aircraft is landing or taking off. So I wonder whether as to how that regulation is required. The second point is that you also find cross-border, these stories coming out in newspapers every day, that the drones are flying over the border, dropping weapons and drugs and that sort of thing. And it can become more sophisticated as all of them become AI synchronized kind of exercises. So I'm wondering, what exactly is the lack of our capacity, which actually, we need to close or the gap to close so that we are in a way better prepared for this emerging airspace situation? Thank you.
So first point about what is the lack of capacity. Today there are challenges, especially with the small drones. They cannot be picked up. I'm saying they are practically invisible to radar, or if they are visible, it is 500 meters or 1 kilometer, which practically doesn't make any use. So today what you have is regulations in place where, especially in these areas where there are aircraft flying, you have it's a red zone. So there is a certain area around the airfield which is earmarked, which there are no drones supposed to fly. So the regulations exist, but it is always many times being flouted. So if you look at the drone policy, it is largely based on trust and everyone following the correct procedure. But unfortunately, that doesn't happen. So that is the challenge. Now, if you're talking of when I gave you this example that ADSB kind of a solution where everyone needs to have a transponder to at least mark his position, it will be very useful for smaller drones because they are the ones which are not being picked up. And of course, large drones, it is required because it is almost like akin to an aircraft. But that increases, the cost. It increases, the regulatory requirements because obviously he's flying it because he doesn't want everyone else to know that he's there. So that is where the, you have the dichotomy right now. So cross-border, we have the same issue. So today what is happening is, they are all these small drones. Again, you're not picked up. They are too low, even for radar to be picked up. So today what we do is, we have jammers. So we have jammers across the border, and everyone is using it. It's not only with the military, it is also with the border security force, the CR and the police forces have it. Now, indiscriminate use of jammers have their own issues. While you may probably prevent some, jamming of, these drones with the data link of these drones or the GPS, but now even that is being got around to, because now they are becoming, they are put jam-proof antennas. So it's a cat and mouse game. But more importantly, the others suffer. You have issues of mobiles, cannot be used. You have aircraft which are flying in this area, which have jamming or spoofing. So these are all the collaterals that you suffer. So it's not something which, there is no magic solution to it, but we have to look at, how you can use different aspects of it to ensure that we are able to achieve the task.
I was heading the aerospace system division in the MOD. I have a recommendation in this regard, and I'll tell you what the ground inputs are. Because I dealt with Ministry of Civil Aviation also. I presented to Air Marshal Sandeep when he was the MA in the NSCS, that are we waiting for a day when the Army Aviation Hepter or the Air Force Me-17 gets hit by a drone? And in fact, instructions were issued by NSCS to MOCA also, but I think the follow-up has not been done. So the real problem is that there's a DG Sky platform, which the Ministry of Civil Aviation is to go. And unfortunately, the Airports Authority of India has been just not doing anything about it. And I think we as a nation have been always reactive to a situation. And I think one day if something happens, like once a drone got hijacked, so we had started seminars by Senjos, which we were recommending for 2 years. So the real issue is Airports Authority of India. If the Indian Air Force responsible for the air defense of this nation, and because of from the armed forces side, the Army, Navy, and the aviation hepters which are flying, if the Indian Air Force could push it at the ministerial level and the Airports Authority of India, because the real bug is Airports Authority of India, which is not letting this happen. So that's my recommendation to you. The question to you, sir, is that when Air Marshal Chaudhari was the Air Chief, we heard of the Air Force becoming an aerospace power. So right now, is the Air Force still on that path? And if yes, then what is the skill development? Because I was interacting with the DAD for the 3 years since it was formed. I was earlier dealing with only 2 Air Force officers in the Plans Directorate. So is the DAD really geared up to take on the space projects of the different space challenges?
Okay, so I think the objective very much remains, because as an Air Force, air and space is one continuum. So we don't look at it as two separate, and the principles of what happens in the air domain also happens in the space domain, whether it's space situational awareness, space control, and things like that. So doctrinally, we are aligned, and all over the world, you find that largely space forces are run by the air forces, because that has been the way we have been brought up. As far as the DAD is concerned, it is very much this thing. But DAD is not, they are not the one-stop solution for all our issues. They are the nodal agency, but we have a full space directorate which actually looks after this aspect. And they are fully into this thing. So basically the DAD will connect to the relevant directorate, who are the subject matter experts. And we are furthering a lot of our programs. In fact, among the 75 space challenges which we had, there are a few which are now fructifying, and we will take them forward. So we are very much involved in the space domain.
Any more questions? Yeah.
Hello, sir. I am Akash. I wanted to point out one thing, that importing drones in India is banned, but at the platform DigiSky, 60% of the drones that are registered are foreign drones, especially Chinese drones, and made by one company called DJI. And despite the ban, there is lack of awareness in the Indian civilian community that the kind of drone that is banned should not be flied in that sense. And many celebrities are flaunting, they have purchased that drone and they are flaunting that drone into the community as well. So how do we stop that? I know it is a law enforcement agency problem, but what do you suggest in that regard? Thank you.
Common thread in all this is, I think in India, we have very good rules. Rules and regulations are all there. We are not able to implement them. So I think that is where we have to look at.
I think this is the topic for the next speaker also in the session. Group Captain R.K. Narang will be speaking on this issue. Maybe he can highlight a few other issues there. Okay, if there are no other questions, I think all that is left is for me to thank Marshal Tiwari for a very insightful presentation that has given us a very clear picture on where we need, what are the challenges and what are the way forward. So please join me in thanking him by a round of applause.